Hey, what's up everyone? Paul from Grindhouse Funhouse, and today is my long-promised overdue overview of my blaxploitation film collection. Blaxploitations happens to be one, if not my favorite genre of films, and with the release of Dolemite Is My Name, the Rudy Ray Moore biopic starring Eddie Murphy, which happens to be in theaters right now and on Netflix. And I did do a review of the movie, so if you want to check that out, it'll be linked up at the end of this video. I just wanted to share with you the titles I've bought over the years, and by no means it is a complete collection. It's barely scratching the surface, but I just wanted to show you what's available out there. And to be clear, I am no way an expert on the subject. I know a fair amount. I am an enthusiast, but I'm sure there's black cinema scholars out there that could teach you way more about it. Matter of fact, there's a couple websites online, groups, websites like the Department of Afro-American Research, Arts and Culture. There's another one that's Cinema of Soul, the Blaxploitation Database. And the one I'm on most of the time is the Blaxploitation Films Facebook group, which is 13,000 members strong. So the love of blaxploitation film is very much alive and well. Quickly, for those of you who might not know what blaxploitation films are about, they were movies focused on the black urban life experience from that time. Most were independently produced, low-budget B-movies or grindhouse films, black actors and actresses had the lead roles, action films, comedies, horror films, kung fu movies, some with really crazy storylines. A lot of them were about fighting the man, the system, but also promoting a message of black empowerment. Protagonists were mostly stereotypically cast as pimps, pushers, prostitutes, but also club owners, cops, detectives, bounty hunters, and just all-around badasses. Also with that came all that crazy good music that served as background for all these movies featuring funk, soul, and jazz soundtracks, but those will be talked about in the next video, so come back for that. The biggest stars of the genre, the Queen, Pam Grier, Fred Williamson, Jim Brown, Bernie Casey, Ron O'Neal. Then you got journeyman actors and actresses like Yaphett, Kotto, Robert Hooks, Max Julien, Paul Winfield, Rod Perry, that appeared a few as well. You got Derville Martin. And on the ladies' side, you had Tamara, Dobson, Gloria Andre, Vanessa McGee. These are just a few of the names. All right, so without further ado, let's start this up. All right, so I wanted to show this in subgenre of blaxploitation. So basically, I'll do this bisection with horror, action, women in blaxploitation. And the first one I'll start with is, I'd say, one of the more recognized aspects of blaxploitation. You know, it's movies about pimps, hustlers, drug dealers, and hoes. Now, in context of its time in the early 70s, while I'm sure it had its critics, I guess it was more well taken as a subject matter back then than in 2019, where some of it would not fly, as the kids would say. The one movie that started it all and put a stamp on the genre is Sweetback's Badass Song. It was independently produced, written, scored, edited, and directed by Melvin Van Peebles. And this all started when Melvin had I think it was a 3-picture deal like Columbia Pictures. And the movies that he presented, this is one of them, and they were not down with funding this movie about a male prostitute that goes on the run from the man. And then the ghetto community helps him. They help hide him because he saved the life of a Black Panther from a racist cops. This was the movie that cost like $150,000 to make, and it ended up earning like $15 million. So studio executives saw that return and said, cha-ching, and the floodgate opened. This title, this release is from Vinegar Syndrome. They always do really good releases. You can see right here on the back. There's a career interview with Melvin Van Peebles on this. And obviously when it's Vinegar Syndrome, the quality of the transfer is just really amazing. And also those cool slip covers right here. So yeah, first up was Sweetback's Badass Song. Up next, Superfly, which Warner Archive Collection released on Blu-ray last year. This is an old DVD copy I bought these many years ago, directed by Gordon Park Jr., Ron O'Neal playing young blood priest. There's Julius Harris in this as well. Youngblood Priest being a pimp and coke dealer who's trying to quit it all. It's obviously also known for the amazing Curtis Mayfield soundtrack. 2 sequels were made of Superfly. There was Superfly TNT, directed by O'Neill the next year, 1973. And do people count the 1990 The Return of Superfly? Starring Nathan Purdy in the Superfly canon? I have no idea. I'm kind of sort of curious of seeing it. And of course there was the remake last year, which I have zero interest of seeing. Superfly is one of the greatest titles in blaxploitation, and there's quite a few good special features on this. You could read this right here, and yeah, man, Superfly. Up next is Willie D. Willie Dynamite, 1974, directed by Gilbert Moss and starring Roscoe Orman as Willie D. And there's Thalmus Rasulala, I should say. Basically, this is another pimp movie. Just Willie D wants to be like the #1 pimp in New York City, and then a former prostitute who's become a social worker wants Willie D to go clean and try to help the community along the way. Roscoe as Willie Dynamite got the swagger on, even though through all his losses. It's funny, with serious overtones, deals with drugs and societal problems that caused during that time. J.J. Johnson did the soundtrack for this. It's pretty damn good. Even Q-Tip for A Tribe Called Quest sampled one of the speeches at one of the Pimps meeting in the last album they did, the song Space Program. So I thought it was pretty cool. There's some nice bonus on this one. One especially called Kiss My Badass, a guide to blaxploitation, hosted by actor and musician Ice-T, and featuring interviews with Richard Roundtree, Melvin Van Peebles, Isaac Hayes, and others. So that was pretty fun. So yeah, Willie D. The Mac, 1973, directed by Michael Campus, starring Max Julien and Richard Pryor. It's not on Blu yet, only on DVD. Also, somebody's gonna release this soon because it's well deserved. Max Julien is Goldie, an up-and-coming player in the pimp game. It's based on Iceberg Slim's book that of his dealings in the pimping game. Richard Pryor plays Goldie's sidekick. There's the Players Picnic and the Players Ball that's featured in the movie. The soundtrack is by Willie Hutch. It's another classic that's well regarded in the blaxploitation genre, and Max Julien does a really good job playing Goldie. So yeah, The Mac right here. And the last title I have in this subgenre is Candy Tangerine Man, which I think is a movie that's not as talked about, that is not as well known. Vinegar Syndrome released this on Blu-ray, and it's starring John Daniels, Ellie Haynes, and Tom Atkinson. It's basically a pimp on Sunset Boulevard named Black Baron, who's a loving husband and a boring regular job during the day, and at night he's a badass pimp. But shit goes down when he kills 2 racist police officers in his pursuit. Then shit for him really gets really real, as shit tends to do. It's a pretty good movie. I really liked it, but yeah, not as well known. So worth seeking out at Vinegar Syndrome. And yeah, that's it for those pimps, hoes, and drug dealer movies. So these next movies should have their own subgenre. They pretty much, I guess they're more, if you think blaxploitation, these movies, at least the first one, that's it. It's literally the first movie that comes to mind, and I'm sure you'll agree with me. And obviously that movie is Shaft, with Richard Roundtree playing the man, and that iconic score from Isaac Hayes, which was and the movie was directed by Gordon Parks. So yeah, Sweet Sweetbacks was the like what lit the fire, and Shaft pretty much what that was like, the gas was poured on top of it and became quite popular. I only have the DVDs. There's Warner Archive recently released all on Blu-ray, which I need to get my hands on. So we got Shaft from 1971, and then they did a sequel, which is Shaft's Big Score, right here, which I have yet to see, but I will soon. And then you have Shaft in Africa, which came out in 1973, which was even less successful than Shaft Big Score, and not directed by Parks. And then MGM turned this into a 7-episode TV movie series on CBS, which is available on DVD, which I want to see, and I've yet to see, but I'm very curious to see how Shaft is handled on TV and not in movie theaters. And then, of course, there was the, I want to say, continuation, reboot, whatever you want to call it, of Shaft in 2000 with Samuel L. Jackson. And then earlier this summer, or should I say last summer now, there was Shaft this time around with Samuel L. Jackson coming back. And Richard Roundtree came back for those movies. In this one here, he played Shaft's uncle, and then they changed the history of this now in the new movie that came out last summer. Then he was his dad in the movie. This series should have stopped with the 3 Shafts from the 70s. It's a good movie, don't get me wrong, but you know, if you want to watch the Shaft, always go back to the original Shaft. And then even Isaac Hayes got in the game. It's in the Shaft sphere, I guess. And I'm talking about Truck Turner right here. That was one of his lead role, and starring Yaphett, Kotto. And this came out in 1974. Did he? I believe he did the soundtrack to this as well. I'm not too sure. Yes, he did. I need to get this on vinyl soon enough. But yeah, Truck Turner. It's a pretty good. He's a decent actor. He handled himself well in this movie. But yeah, Truck Turner. I created a subgenre for this man, Rudy Ray Moore, because you know, he's quite the character, and I feel like he deserves his own subgenre. And obviously, he's if you've seen Dolemite Is My Name, which is a Netflix movie right now in some theaters, and on Netflix. Eddie Murphy playing him. It's an amazing movie. I actually did a review of it, and you could see there's a link at the end if you want to click on it, see my thoughts on this amazing movie. But yeah, Dolemite, Vinegar Syndrome did a really good job for this transfer. They always do. Like I could say for every Vinegar Syndrome titles, they always do an amazing job. So yeah, we got many features on this, and they also released the sequel, which is The Human Tornado right here, which also weird and good, and its own brand of amazing, I guess, if you can say that. And right here for the special features. And they also released P.D. Wheatstraw right here, The Devil's Son-in-Law, also known as. It's a movie about making a deal with the devil that goes horribly wrong. It's just a weird-ass movie. Like, very... it's really out there. So, and so many other special features you could read right here as well. And then finally, Vinegar also released, which I have yet to see, Disco Godfather, which the famous quote, "Put your weight on it," is in this. And it's a very 70s movie, and I cannot wait to watch it. So yeah, that's it for the Rudy Ray Moore movies. Up next, these are the more weird, experimental, socio-political, fight the man movies, and I got a few of those. The first one being Bone, which came out in 1972. This is the Blue Underground DVD. There's no Blu-ray yet. It's directed by Larry Cohen, who is in his directorial debut and is one of my favorite film director, if not for exploitation movies, all-around directors. That man has had such great imagination, an amazing way of telling stories. He's deeply missed since he died last year. In this one, Yaphett Kotto stars as Bone, who he pretty much takes a couple hostage. I think it's in Beverly Hills, like a rich rich part of town, which he intends to rob them, and then weird shit starts happening as things tends to. And I've not seen it yet. I have a few Larry Cohen movies I have yet to see, and this is one of them. But it's definitely coming up soon. I want to get my Bone on. Yeah, I said that. All right, so yeah, Bone right here. Then we have Top of the Heap, which came out in 1972. This is a Code Red Blu-ray release. This was written, produced, directed, and starring Christopher St. John, a vanity project if ever there was one. It's a blaxploitation drama about an angry black cop and family man in Washington fighting the system and fighting himself. It's something. It's it's all about him and his weird, crazy ideas that somehow he put on film. It's well worth a look right here. So yeah, Top of the Heap. Then we have The Black Gestapo, also released as Ghetto Warrior, which Code Red also released. It's a Nazi blaxploitation film. Not too many of those. In fact, it's safe to say it's probably the only one. Rod Perry stars with Charles P. Robinson. You might best know him for playing Mac on the 80s sitcom Night Court. Here he plays the villain. Quite different from his Night Court role. Rod Perry's character starts as an inner city people's army to protect the black citizen of Watts and fight the man. It's again, kind of has a social-political thing happening, but with Nazis in them. There's a castration scene in this, the bathroom scene. That's pretty gnarly to watch even for that era. It totally made me cringe, but yeah, it's another good one here. Here's the special features if you want to see them. So yeah, The Black Gestapo. Last one in this genre is Welcome Home, Brother Charles. Came out in 1975. Vinegar Syndrome did this one. It's directed by Jama Fanaka and starring Marlo Monty as Charles, who plays a dope pusher who gets sent to jail by a really racist cop. While in jail, they do experiments on him and comes out with a killer penis that he uses to exact revenge. It's probably the only movie of its kind, really. This was Jama's student film at UCLA, and somehow it got a theatrical release. As well it should. It had a killer penis in it. So yeah, there you go. We got here you can see like the special features, and yeah, right here, Welcome Home, Brother Charles. All right, next subgenre, the women in blaxploitation. And when I talk about the women, I must talk about the one and only, the queen, one of the finest women that's ever graced this earth. I speak, of course, of Miss Pam Grier. She basically was one of the first female action heroes, and she was fly as fuck. Let's be real here. I don't own all of her movies. I've owned most of her movies. First one that I have is Black Mama, White Mama, which is a Arrow video release. This movie came out in 1973. I was inspired by the movie The Defiant Ones, where a black and white women in this version are chained together, escape prison in Latin America, and runs from the law. Basically, there was all those women in prison movies from the 70s that were like filmed in the Philippines, and Roger Corman put all his money in that genre of movie. Sid Haig is in this, and future Oscar winner Jonathan Demme, who did Silence of the Lamb as a story credit on this one. And it's very much one of the better ones in this genre. And this is my favorite of hers. It is a stone cold classic. It is Coffee, and I have the poster on my wall. I get to look at her every day. From this movie, she's the baddest one chick hit squad that's ever hit town. She's the godmother of them all. Damn right she is. She wants to seek revenge against a heroin dealer that's responsible for her sister's addiction, and it's directed by Jack Hill. Sig Haig is also in this. The soundtrack by Roy Ayers. Coffee is the color. It's Pretty Kidder, which you'll see in the next video. This is a quintessential blaxploitation title. If you want to start up watching blaxploitation movies, this is like in the top 3. You must own Coffee. Do it. If you own Coffee, you have to own Foxy Brown as well. It's Jack Hill and Pam Grier that came back a year later to do this one. Arrow Video released it on Blu-ray. This was supposed to be a Coffee sequel. It was titled Burn Coffee Burn, and then at the last minute, American International Picture decided not to do it, and this became its own thing. The music for this is by Willie Hutch. Another great soundtrack, another great blaxploitation title that it is a must-own. It is Pam Grier in all its glory, and obviously Quentin Tarantino saw this movie and decided to do his own thing with Jackie Brown, which you get to see a little bit later. So yeah, Foxy Brown. Then in 1975, Pam played an ex-magazine model turned magazine photographer in Friday Foster. Olive Film released this on Blu-ray. It's based on a newspaper comic strip by the same name that she brought to life. The character on screen. It stars my man Yaphett, Kotto, wham bam, here comes Pam. And it's another great performance of hers. I don't want to say like it's a must own, but it's a fun. If you're a fan of Pam Grier, obviously you need to have Friday Foster in your collection. Also in 1975, she appeared in the movie Sheba Baby, directed by William Girdler. She plays a private investigator, and Arrow Video released this. It's another fun performance from Pam, and you can see right here all the special features. There you go, Sheba Baby. So that was it for my Pam Grier movies from the 70s. In other blaxploitation with women in the lead roles, there's TNT Jackson, which came out in 1975. It's starring Jean Bell. It's about gangsters and kidnappings, and this story was actually written by Dick Miller, who's a famous character actor. I'm sure most of you know him just looking at this face right here. But Roger Corman, who produced this, got someone else to rewrite it. But I have yet to see it. That's why I can't really talk much about it. But it is with Playboy playmate Jean Bell, so I'm sure it's quite the watch. TNT Jackson. Then I have Cleopatra Jones, which Warner Archive just released on Blu-ray. I think was last month. Tamara Dobson plays Cleopatra Jones. There's Bernie Casey in this. Shelley Winters that plays the villain, and quite a whacked out one at that. She pretty much plays just like an undercover special agent. I still have to buy Cleopatra Jones and the Casino of Gold. Is it what it is? I think it's what it is. But another fun watch with a badass woman in the lead right here. And that's right, the story was by Max Julian, he of the Mac. But yeah, there you go. Cleopatra Jones. And the last movie I have in my collection with women in the starring role is Lady Coco, starring Lola Falana. It's Vinegar Syndrome. It was with the Candy Tangerine Man. It was a double feature. It's a movie about a woman that gets out of jail, goes after her husband who put her there. That's as much as I know about the movie since I've yet to see it. But looking at the cover, I'm sure the movie is not as good as the cover, as most posters are way better than most of those movies. But yeah, I still can't wait to see it. Here you go, Lady Coco. All right, now we're getting the subgenre that I particularly enjoy, which is the action movies. So basically, all the gangster movies, the bank heist movies, revenge movies, they kill my brother, sister, parents, dog movies, and they'll go on a rampage or revenge, whatever, and they'll stop at nothing to get the job done movies. Two big stars that came out of those movies, Fred Williamson and Jim Brown, two ex-football players that turned their football playing skills into acting skills. First movie from Fred Williamson was Hammer, which Olive Film released. It also starred the lovely Vanetta McGee, and he plays a boxer who's held by the mafia. Solomon Burke does the score here, and that's where his nickname, the Hammer, stuck. It was from his football days. So yeah, Hammer right here. Then a year later, he came out with Black Caesar, which is a Larry Cohen movie. Olive Films again released this on Blu-ray. Fred in this plays it's like a mafia movie. He plays the head of the black crime syndicate. James Brown does the score for this, so it's really, really fucking good. Also co-starring is Gloria Hendry. Derville Martin is in this. Julius Harris. It's pretty damn good. It's one of his better ones, actually. He's done quite a few films in his career, Fred. And what was fun about Larry Cohen is he would usually shoot without permits in the streets of New York. So sometimes when he shot on the fly, the people around didn't know that the movie was being shot, so they thought that the things they were doing were actually happening. There's a great documentary called King Cohen. If you want to know more about Larry Cohen and his career, you'll get stories like this. But they did Black Caesar, and then a year later, they came back for L Up in Harlem, which the way it ended in the first one, you would think, why is there a sequel to this? But there is one, and it's a pretty good one. Again, everyone comes back for this, and very much worth owning in your collection. Then in 1975, Fred, Pam Grier, Thalmus, Rasulala, and Tony King join up for Bucktown, which is a Scorpion releasing on Blu-ray. I've yet to see the movie. I'm dying to. I've been waiting for an occasion to just pop it in and watch it. Probably this weekend, matter of fact. Now I really want to watch it. But Fred in this plays Duke Johnson, a man who arrives in Bucktown to bury his brother, who's a bar owner that was killed because he refused to pay crooked cops for protection money. And then he comes to Bucktown. He sees how shitty the town is and calls in his friend Roy, who's played by Thalmus Rasulala. I just like saying his name. That cops help him and fuck shit over in Bucktown. And that's pretty much it. That's the gist of it. And it's really a stacked cast. You even got Carl Weathers that shows up in this in one of his first movie role. So I cannot wait to watch Bucktown right here. Then in 1976, Fred decided to try his hand at directing. This is his directorial debut. It's Mean Johnny Barrows. It stars him, Elliot Gould, Stuart Whitman, Roddy McDowell. It's about a Vietnam vet that gets caught in a mob war with there's a lot of double crossing that it's involved in this. This is his directorial debut. He's done quite a few after this one, but this is his first. This is the next movie he directed in 1976, Death Journey. Code Red releasing did this one on Blu-ray. He plays a character named Jesse Crowder, which this character comes back in other films. It's about a star witness that's fearful of being murdered, and two attorneys hired him as the protector of this witness. And obviously, Fred is in the movie is a no nonsense tough guy, and wackiness ensues. So it's not the best movie in the world, but if you're a fan of Fred, you know, it's worth owning, I guess. But yeah, that journey right here. Then in 1977, he directed his next movie, which is titled Mr. Mean. Fred playing Mr. Mean, who's a former Cosa Nostra henchman that's hiring himself as a hitman, and then he lands a job, and his mission happens to be wiping out his old boss. Ooh, how awkward. But that's another late 70s Fred Williamson joint that's just A-okay. But again, if you're a Fred Williamson fan, it's very much worth owning. And on this double feature, the other movie is Joshua, which is a Western. He plays a black soldier that returns from fighting the Union in the Civil War, only to find out that his mother has been murdered by a gang of white thugs. He becomes a bounty hunter, and then he's determined to track down and kill the man who killed his mother. The only Western I've seen of his, and I need to own, is the Bus N-Word one, which is also directed by Fred, starring Derville Martin. That movie is great, and I saw this in theaters these many years ago, and it's very much worth owning. But this is he's done quite a few Westerns actually, and this is the other one, Joshua. There you go. How I only own 2 Jim Brown movies, it's from the 70s, is a mystery to me, but I need to get on my game and buy a few more. Obviously, the classic of his, and the one he's more identified with, is Slaughter. Olive Films released this one. This came out in 1972. So yeah, you have Jim Brown playing Slaughter. You have Stella Stevens, who looks really hot in this movie. There's Rip Torn, who plays the villain, and then everyone's favorite Cameron Mitchell is in this as well. Rip Torn as the villain. The man brings it. He commits to playing one of the most asshole-ish character in blaxploitation. This is the story is about Slaughter, who's a former Green Beret who avenged killings of loved ones by the mob, and after being blackmailed by the feds, he's forced to head south to South America to finish the mobsters off. So yeah, it's again, it's one of those better ones, blaxploitation titles, definitely in the top 5. This Blu-ray double feature is from Mill Creek that came out earlier this year, and Jim Brown is in Black Gun, which came out in 1972. There's Martin Landau in this, who plays the villain. There's Bernie Casey. There's Brenta Sykes. He plays a really cool, nightclub owner who believes financial independence is the path to equality and success, and must act as a go-between for militants. It's really well done, actually. The music is great. The look of it, you really get engaged by it. It's really, really one of the better ones. I keep saying that, but Black Gun is really on top right there. And the other movie on this is The Take, which stars Billy D. Williams, and there's Eddie Albert in this, and Frankie Avalon, of all people. Billy D. plays a policeman in New Mexico, takes payoff money, but still manages to go after a racketeer. And I've not seen this one yet, but I do intend to. So yeah, The Take. Cotton Comes to Harlem, which came out in 1970, directed by Ozzie Davis. This was released by Kino Lorber. I got the DVD version, but there's a Blu-ray one as well. It's pretty much about a preacher that steals money from its congregation, and then 2 police officers are on the case, and this money is inside of bales of cotton. That's how it gets to be laundered, I guess. So yeah, still haven't seen this one too, but it has a really good cast with Red Fox, Cleveland Little, Judy Pace, Calvin Lockhart, Godfrey Cambridge. This is one of the, I'd say, most people say Sweet Sweetbacks is the first blaxploitation movie, but some other might say this is what started it all. But I guess it wasn't called blaxploitation yet. It was just a movie. But yeah, definitely worth checking out. Up next is Detroit 9000, which came out in 1973. This release is a DVD from Rolling Thunder Pictures, which was Quentin Tarantino's, I guess, releasing company in the 90s. So any movies of his that he liked from the 70s, exploitation, blaxploitation, he released. This was one of the titles. So this movie is pretty much about a fundraiser for a black politician that was robbed, and then two Detroit police detectives are put on the case, one white, one black, and then they try to work together under boiling political pressure. It stars Alex Rocco, Harry Rhodes, Vonetta McGee, and this is I feel like this is one of the lesser known blaxploitation titles, but as you look at this poster right near the artwork, it pretty much represents what the movie is about, and definitely worth a look. Up next is The Black Godfather, starring Rod Perry, which came out in 1974. This is some random DVD company release. Again, no Blu-ray for this one. The movie's about a rising star in the black crime scene that's in the process of consolidating all his power from the neighborhoods. But the problem he has is the white heroin cartel that does not want to give up its power in his neighborhood, and then tension rises and shit goes down, and that's pretty much it. Cool Breeze, which came out in 1972. This is a DVD from the Warner Archive Collection. No Blu-ray yet. It stars Thalmus Rasulala, Jim Watkins, Judy Pace, Raymond Saint-Jacques, a killer soundtrack for Solomon Burke. It's pretty much about a parole crook masterminds a $3 million jewelry theft to fund a bank for businessmen, and really good action and craziness. And there's a small role from Pamela Grier, and one of her early roles, and very much worth seeking out. Hitman, which came out in 1972, which more famously was adapted as Get Carter, starring Michael Caine in England, but this was like the American blaxploitation version of it. It was directed by George Armitage, who did Grosse Pointe Blank in the 90s with John Cusack, and has a great theme song, which is a Hitman, Hitman, what you gonna do? Which has zero soundtrack for it. It never came out, so this would be a great opportunity for a label out there to release this great soundtrack. So it's pretty much like a slow burn at the beginning, where Bernie Casey's brother in the movie is murdered, and he comes to town to figure out who might have killed him. And there's a storyline about the porn industry in there, and Pam Grier, in probably her sleaziest role she's ever done, plays a porn star in this. And there's a great scene towards the end where, let's just say, the way she gets dispatched is very creative, but it's definitely one of my favorite blaxploitation titles. Bernie Casey is cool as fuck in this movie. He's really good, and I'd say, again, this would be in the top 5 of titles to get if you're starting your blaxploitation collection. Definitely get your hand on Hitman. Here we have Trouble Man, which came out in 1972. This is a Kino Lorber release. Robert Hooks plays Mr. T before Mr. T was a thing. Plays an hard-edged private detective who takes justice into his own hands. It's pretty much, I think it was like crap games that are being knocked off, being stolen money from, and he gets hired on the case to fix things. Again, another one of those really cool movies. Robert Hooks is really the shit in this one. Paul Winfield's in this as well. Ralph Waits, Julius Harris, and a really cool soundtrack from Marvin Gaye, which is the only one he's ever done for a film. So yeah, Trouble Man. Across 110th Street, which was released in 1972. This is a Kino Lorber release. It stars Yaphett, Kotto, and Anthony Quinn. Another great theme song in this. The music's from Bobby Womack and J.J. Johnson. This is a movie about a robbery, and it's money taken from the Italian mob. Many mafioso are killed, and two policemen are on the case, try to figure things out. And it's three small-time criminals that are on the run with the money. So all you're trying to figure out is, will the mafia catch them first, or will the police? It's another one of those great classics from the early 70s in the blaxploitation genre. Very much worth getting as well. Obviously, all these movies are worth getting. Up next is the movie Hit, which came out in 1973. This is a Blu-ray from Olive Films, directed by Sidney J. Furie. It stars Billy D. Williams, Richard Pryor, Paul Hampton. It's about a federal agent trying to destroy a drug zone after his daughter dies from a heroin overdose. It's a long-ass movie. It's a 2-hour plus movie. It's Billy D. Williams just kicking ass. Just look at this thing. Look at him with his giant phallic gun on there on the front cover. I've yet to see it. The 2 hours kind of runtime's kind of putting me off a little bit, but I will eventually get to it. But yeah, Billy D. Williams and Hit. Up next is Penitentiary, which came out in 1979 from Jama Fanaka, who earlier I showed you did Welcome Home, Brother Charles. This is Vinegar Syndrome that did the release for this, again with the real cool, slip cover they have. This is the actual artwork for the movie right here. And yeah, it's a movie about a hitchhiker, I should say, who gets into fights with two bikers and over a prostitute. And one of the bikers is killed, and he's arrested and goes to prison. So in prison, he joins a boxing team in an effort to secure an early parole and to establish his dominance over the prison's toughest gang. So yeah, one of those prison movie that should be really good. I know they did 2 sequels for this. Penitentiary 2, right here. And in this one, the actual Mr. T was in this, and Glenn Turman and Leon Asen Kennedy was in both of the movies. I don't know if I mentioned this. And there's also a Penitentiary 3, which came out in 1987, which I've yet to own, but it's on the list. It will be bought. So yeah, man, Penitentiary, those 2 movies right here. So for this subgenre, it's one of my favorites. So basically, all the horror, supernatural movies that the blaxploitation genre released. And what better way to start than with Blackula, starring the scholarly William Marshall as Blackula, although he's not called Blackula in this. He's called Prince Manualde. And it's pretty much about Prince Manualde, who goes to Transylvania in the 18th century, and Dracula turns him into a vampire. And then 2 centuries later, he rises from his coffin, attacking various residents of LA, and he meets this woman named Tina, who we believes is the reincarnation of his deceased wife. And that's about it. It's a pretty silly, fun movie. And I don't think there's anybody else than William Marshall that could have played this role. He's really very singular in his acting, and for this, he really commits. And I feel like it's one of the better ones in the vampire canon, if you will. And a year later, they did the sequel, Scream Blackula Scream, which, by the way, this is a Scream Factory release of the Blu-ray, a double feature. And in the sequel, we get Pam Grier playing a voodoo priestess. It's pretty much a voodoo / vampire movie. And Richard Lawson, in one of his first role, plays one of the vampires Blackula turned over, and he's pretty funny in this as well. And I actually feel it's a bit campier, but the look of it, the cinematography of the second movie is really, really beautiful. which is kind of on such a low budget. They really did something good with that. So yeah, definitely get your hands on this release from Screen Factory, The Two Blackulas. Up next is Blackenstein, also known as Black Frankenstein. This came out in 1973. This Blu-ray release is from Severin Films. And first of all, this woman on the cover is nowhere to be seen in the movie, so don't be expecting her. But this came out to cash in on Blackula's success. And it was produced and written by Frank Soletri, who was found murdered gangling style in his home in a mansion formerly owned by Bela Lugosi, which really adds something to the whole affair. It's about a Vietnam veteran who loses his arms and legs when he steps on a landmine, but a brilliant surgeon is able to attach new limbs, but an insanely jealous assistant who has fallen in love with Eddie's fiancée switches Eddie's DNA injections, transforming him into Blackenstein. And then wackiness and craziness ensues. Again, this is not one of the better films in the blaxploitation era, but it's or genre, I should say. You know, it's just a fun little movie with basically no budget, and clearly you could tell this was really a cash-in movie. And but you know, I'm sure the intent was good, I'm sure, when they decided to this movie, but the result was not the best. But still a fun watch. Yeah, you should check it out. Up next is JD's Revenge, which came out in 1976. This is an Arrow Video Blu-ray release, directed by Arthur Marks, the same guy who did Detroit 9000 and Friday Foster. It stars Glenn Turman, who does an incredible job in this. He really commits. And Lou Gossett Jr. is in this. Was shot in New Orleans. It's one of those like supernatural revenge horror films. And I like this tagline. He came back from the dead to possess a man's soul, makes love to his woman, and get the vengeance he craved. And it's pretty much about a college student played by Glenn Turman, who's possessed by a 40s era gangster. He has this like a Jekyll and Hyde role that Glenn Turman plays here, and he's really good. Yeah. Another movie where voodoo is a theme. This is Sugar Hill, which came out in 1974. This is a Scorpion release on Blu-ray, and the crux of the movie is that she uses voodoo for revenge. She raised people from the dead to avenge her boyfriend's murder. And the mafia is involved in this. And Marky Bay plays the voodoo practitioner that you see on this artwork. It's one of those, again, that I have yet to see. Dying to, actually. Probably going to see it very soon. Looks very cheesy, very good. Yeah, Sugar Hill. This is The Thing with Two Heads, which came out in 1972. This is an Olive film release. It's a silly B-movie, blaxploitation, exploitation with a high concept, I guess. It's about a dying, rich, racist man who hatches a scheme where he wants to live forever. So basically, he wants to transplant his head onto another man's body, and the doctors couldn't find, like, I guess, viable candidates for this. Finds a black man on death row to do this to, and then fun wackiness things ensues. And I like the timeline for this, which is they transplanted a white bigot's head onto a soul brother's body. So it pretty much tells you anything you need to know about the movie. The cover for this sucks, but the poster on my wall is amazing, as you can see right here. And it almost feels like the poster matches what you're seeing in the movie, almost. But yeah, it's a really wacky, silly fun that's worth checking out. Last movie in the horror supernatural genre of blaxploitation is Devil's Express, aka Gang Wars, which came out in 1976. This is a Code Red Blu-ray release, and if your keen eye recognizes the man on the cover, it was what was on my t-shirt at the beginning when I did my intro. I found out this great shirt through the Blaxploitation Films Face group. Someone made a post on it and says, I did not need to own this shirt, but I got it anyway, and I felt it the exact same way and ordered it right away. So in any case, Devil's Express is about a tough black martial artist cops that takes on street gangs and an evil demon that haunts the New York City subways. It stars Warhawk Tanzania, which a very singular talent. He has a great look about him, and this is pretty much a blaxploitation horror kung fu movie. It is an odd movie, very odd movie, but really worth checking out for sure. So for this subgenre, these would be the post-blaxploitation films, the movies that were inspired by or maybe continuation of the genre, but that came out in the 80s, 90s, and the 2000s. And I got a few, and I want to start with Badass, which is a biopic written, produced, directed, and starring Mario Van Peebles. And as you can tell, the film is based on the struggles of Van Peebles' father, Melvin Van Peebles, who Mario plays him as he attempts to film and distribute Sweet Sweetback's Badass song. Mario actually appeared in Sweet Sweetback, so pretty much this is a full circle thing for him. It must have been weird to play his own father in this biopic. And you also got in this movie Ozzie Davis. You get David Allen Grier, Neal Long. This is pretty good. This is a pretty good biopics, and if you're a fan of the genre, it's definitely worth checking out. Yeah, he did a really good job with this one. Up next is Jackie Brown, which is Quentin Tarantino's homage to blaxploitation films, which came out in 1997, and it put Pam Grier back on the map. And Robert Forster, who got nominated for an Oscar, supporting actor, who recently passed away and was in tons of movies I love. But this was an adaptation of Elmer Leonard's 1992 novel Rum Punch, and this was a modern-day blaxploitation film, and just putting Pam Grier, the Queen, back on the screens like this in a very substantial role was really amazing of him to do. And she really crushed it in this. And obviously, who doesn't know about Jackie Brown if you like blaxploitation movies? And you've probably seen this already. And yeah. In Crack House, which is a 1999 release from Canon Film, so you know it's quality right there when you got the Canon logo on there. It's Richard Roundtree and Jim Brown that joined forces in this. It's about rival gangs, crack dealing, a dead brother, revenge, all the good things you need in a movie like this. In Black Cobra, Fred Williamson plays Robert Malone, a detective who dishes out his own brand of justice. It came out in 1987. It's an Italian action movies, and it's obviously a ripoff of Stallone's Cobra. As you know, Italians are really good at ripping genres off, and Fred Williamson worked quite a bit in Italy and did quite a few movies there. And it's actually a series of 4 films that he did in the 80s and early 90s. It's just an okay series. And you really watch it just for Fred Williamson. But you've seen this movie thousands of times before. But with Fred, it just adds a little extra something. I could have saved this one for the horror subgenre. But since it came out in 1995, I wanted to keep it for the post blaxploitation era, and it's a horror anthology that definitely has a blaxploitation edge to it. Actually, Scream Factory did a release of this a couple of years ago, and a sequel came out last year, which is Tales from the Hood 2, right here. Again, produced by Spike Lee, who produced the first one. I had a chance to see this last year at Fantasia, but couldn't make it. So I bought this Blu-ray, which I will watch eventually. But yeah, it's a very good series to check out. And the last movie I own in the post-blaxploitation era is original Gangsters, which came out in 1996. This is a Kino Lorber release, and this was Larry Cohen's last movie in theaters, and he brought the whole team back together one last time for this. And by team, I mean Fred Williamson, Jim Brown, Pam Grier, Ron O'Neill, Richard Roundtree, Paul Winfield. So it is a murderer's row of actors from that genre that came back for this. And it's about old gang members that comes back to a city, a town, where they have to deal with the new recruits of the same gang that are stirring shit up. And those old timers really give a good whooping to those kids, and it's a pretty decent watch actually. And I actually remember a few years back, Fred tried to do an Indiegogo fundraiser. He wanted to do a sequel that he would have called Old School Gangsters, but sadly it was not successful. But who knows? It could have been the next Expendable. You know, I definitely would have watched this crew again, kicking some ass. But yeah, it's a fun little watch. It's definitely a '90s movie. When you see it, you know what I mean. But get on it. So here's 3 titles I own about blaxploitation, documentaries about it, and a trailer compilation. So this one is Jim Brown All American, which was directed by Spike Lee, came out in 2003. It is a 2-hour and 20-minute long documentary that aired on HBO. It's about his athletic career, his acting, his activism. Bernie Casey, Fred Williamson, Melvin Van Peebles shows up in this. So it's a pretty good watch. There's Badass Cinema, a bold look at 70s blaxploitation films, which came out in 2002 from IFC release. It's just an hour-long documentary that looks at the genre from the 70s, and you see a lot of clips, interviews, and yeah, it's a take on that era of films that if you want to learn more about, it's a pretty enjoyable watch. And we have Badass Motherfuckers, which is a 90 minutes trailer compilation hosted by Fred the Hammer Williamson. I am a sucker for all things trailer compilations. I own at least more than 20 of them. This is the kind of thing where you just, if there's a party and you want to put something in the background, this is the best things to put. And it's really fun to watch in short bursts. And you have a pretty good collection on this one. It's definitely a starter kit, if you will, in blaxploitation. If you want to just watch many trailers at once, this is a good pick. And finally, the last subgenre I want to talk about are the parodies, satire comedies. The blaxploitation genre was ripe for being made fun of. And I'm going to start you up with I'm Gonna Get You Sucker, which I believe is one of the first parodies of the genre, and I could be wrong. Let me know in the comment section below. This came out in 1988, and Kino Lorber did the Blu-ray release for this. And this was directed by and starring Keenan Ivory Wayans and his entire family. This was his feature film directorial debut. Jim Brown's in this, Bernie Casey, Antonio Fargas, Isaac Hayes, and if you've seen blaxploitation movies, you will recognize many tropes in this that they're making fun of. And yeah, up next is Undercover Brother, which came out in 2002, starring Eddie Griffin. This was a cartoon on the internets before turning this into a movie. This is kind of a mix between a blaxploitation film and a James Bond film, but you know, as a parody, if you will. A sequel of this just came out a couple weeks ago with the original title Undercover Brother 2, starring Michael J. White, which I'm gonna talk at the end of this subgenre. Yeah, it's a fun little movie. Billy D. Williams in this, Dave Chappelle, Doogie Howser's in this, Neil Patrick Harris. Yeah, I need to revisit this. I remember liking it quite a bit back in the day. Up next, we got Pootie Tang, which came out in 2001, which Louis C.K. directed. This was a comedy sketch on the Chris Rock show. Can this be considered a blaxploitation satire, comedy, homage? I'm sure it can. It's not a good movie, but I still own it for some reason. But I decided to include it here, so you know, because you'll let me know. Let me know if you consider this an actual, you know, satire of the genre. And finally, he's super bad. He's out of sight. He's Black Dynamite, and this is probably one of my favorite comedies ever. I actually feel like this is probably the movie that got me way more into blaxploitation than I was, and it's just really a loving tribute to the genre, and it is funny as fuck. I mean, so many quotable things. I threw that shit out before I walk in the room. I'm running things. But Black Dynamite, I sell drugs to the community. And who the hell is interrupting my kung fu? You know, all funny things that I can't really deliver as funny as all these actors in the movie, but you get the gist. In the movie, you get characters like Bullhorn, Cream Corn, Honeybee, Mahogany Black, which are clearly based on characters and many blaxploitation films we like. And a couple years later, we even got an animated series out of Black Dynamite in 2012 on the Cartoon Network, on the Adult Swim segment of it. And the show was actually crazier than the movie itself. Episodes were based on like Michael Jackson, O.J. Simpson, Bill Cosby, Sidney Poitier, Richard Pryor, Don Cornelius, Dick Clark, Spike Lee. Just really out there stuff that sadly didn't caught on. We got another season out of it, but this is a release. They only released season 1 on there, and it's kind of, I don't know, I think you could see all of the series on Amazon probably, and it's very much worth a look, and the entire cast came back for it. So it is probably the only sequel we'll ever get out of Black Dynamite are the animated episodes we got. Michael J. White slays it as Black Dynamite. He was known before only as Spawn, you know, the superhero movie from the 90s, and he's obviously a amazing martial art expert, but his legacy will be Black Dynamite. Like I said, like we might not get a sequel to Black Dynamite, a true sequel, but the whole gang is back together, and they're gonna do a kind of like a blaxploitation western homage, and it's called Outlaw Johnny Black, which they're in pre-production right now, when you should see really soon. That's it for this collection overview. My God, this thing's gonna be so long, and I'm sure I've rambled so much. Maybe some of it didn't make sense, and I'm sure you'll let me know in the comment section. But yeah, this is it. This was my entire collection I had so far of blaxploitation films. If you like this, please like, share, and subscribe. Check out my Instagram feed at Grindhouse Funhouse, where I post on the daily about all things cult and underground cinema. In the comment section below, let me know what's your favorite blaxploitation movie, favorite actor, actresses. Are there titles that you did not see in my overview that you would like to recommend? Please do so in there. Let's get a discussion going. Do come back for my next video, where I'll talk about all the cool blaxploitation soundtracks I've found on vinyl so far. There's some pretty sweet titles in there I'm sure you will like. So thank you for watching, and see you next time.